What's up, everybody? Arrg The Pirate here, and today I'm going to break down the 25th Community Corner. Now, they kind of talk about a handful of things that I really want to get into, so I'm going to kind of just briefly talk about all the small things and not really get into them too much. But the first thing I need to talk about is they're still working on issues. They're aware of a handful of issues and they're working around the clock to fix them. They have memory, FPS, and crash issues all going on, and they are working on them. Now, next week, we are going to get a balancing update, and it's going to adjust a few cards. They specifically mentioned Unstable Cyborg, which I want to talk more about that, so let's just kind of move past that right now. But we are expected a new update that will have some balancing, and then we will have an even more balancing update coming out in version 43.3, which I would assume that's going to be on the, every 3 week kind of thing. So next week we are getting an update. Now, getting more into that Unstoppable Cyborg, I really want to kind of talk about it and, really just kind of break down what they talk about as well. Now, first, let's go over why it took them so long to actually come up with a fix for it. And they kind of describe it as, hey, you need to gather data, so you need, a few days to gather data, then you have to make changes, then you have to test changes, then you have to go public with the changes. So this isn't a, hey, this card's broken, we found out, an hour into the first match, and hey, this is how to fix it. There's a lot more going on, and so we might have to deal with broken things, and that's really typical of every game out there. Paragon's not a special case. I do kind of feel that we could see a little more on the side of them, but hey, by them fixing or nerfing Unstable Cyborg, they're going to have other issues with other cards that arise because that card might, get out of the meta. So, the testing is very important, and we definitely need to, just kind of say, okay, we'll give you a little extra time. And that's really not a big deal at all. Now, they also talk about when they are making changes, they also have to consider range. And that affects things as well, the range of the AoE, or the range of, Gideon's Rock, or things like that. Is there damage drop-off? I don't really see that, but they do talk about that, and it is all considered. So, that's kind of one of those things that, or just another thing we have to consider when we are talking about changes being implemented. Now, let's kind of get into that Unstable Cyborg and really break it down. And I'm going to just briefly go over the numbers that they give and then kind of give my input on them. Now, they say Unstable Cyborg is only present in 1.5% of all custom decks, and it is the 19th most popular card. Unstable Cyborg is also present in 7.5% of matches and is only present in 19% of matches above 1600 ELO or MMR, it's the same thing. And so, that's really only 1 out of every 5 matches or so. And this card is only used for around 30% of the match before the match is over. Now, I'm not going to argue over their numbers. That's what they said they are, and okay, I'm on board with that. I don't really think you need to be looking at the 1600 and above ELO, which they mentioned that several times. I think they should concentrate more on, let's say, the 1300 ELO, or maybe even the 1350 range, because that's where the majority of players are. 1600, that's 0.5% of players. The 1300, that's probably more like around 50% of players. But besides that, let's kind of move away from all the numbers and everything. But, okay, so in my personal decks on that account, on that kind of mid-range account, the level 30 account, I believe I can have a total of 12 decks on that account. And of those 12 decks, I've got 2 of them with Unstable Cyborg on. And those decks are specifically for 3 different heroes. And, you know, I typically don't like to just play the same old deck. I want to show everybody on, you know, with my videos, I want to show the different arrangements you can come out with decks. You know, I could go, hey, use Unstable Cyborg, use this deck. This is the best deck you can make. Sure, I could do that, but I would have one video. Alright, let's just say I completely 100% agree with your numbers. You know, I don't think you have any reason to lie to me, but, you know, those numbers, they're set in stone. Those are the numbers. I'm okay with that. Now, my issue with Unstable Cyborg is, you know, by these numbers, when you look at these numbers, this card is not a concern. But the problem is this card is only tuned for a very small amount of heroes. There are 3 positions that should never have this card on. And that is, you know, your support. You know, you might be able to get away with it with a Steel or a Narbash support, but for the most part, they probably shouldn't be running this card. And by the time they put this card on, it's going to, you know, this is going to be like a 40-minute match because, you know, it's a 12-point card. So I don't think you're going to see this card on supports, but the other supports, other than the tank supports, shouldn't have this card on. So there's 20% of heroes completely removed from this card. ADCs should not be running this card. There's another 20%. Casters or mid laners should not be running this card. There's another 20%. So basically you're left with the jungle and the off lane that really have access to this card. And okay, I'm completely, you know, that makes perfect sense. There's only 40% of heroes, or 40% of the positions within Paragon can take advantage of this card. And, you know, that makes sense. Well, now you have to run into the issue of, what if you have a caster in the off lane? Or what if your jungler is an ADC? Or, you know, any of the other combinations. I've seen Countess in the jungle. I don't like it, but I've seen her in there. She's not going to run Unstable Cyborg. This is an issue, and, you know, I really think this is one of the reasons why we're not seeing these changes, is because the numbers, the data that Epic is receiving isn't lining up. And this is because there's only a very small few heroes that can take advantage of these cards. So instead of saying, hey, this card is only in 1.5% of decks, we don't need to look at it. No, you need to look at it is in these heroes that can take advantage of these cards. Almost all these heroes are running this. And, you know, you could say, oh, hey, there's a lot of people that don't want to use the same decks. Right now, Unstable Cyborg is an amazing card. And I don't use it on a whole lot of heroes. I've got my Chimera deck that's Death and Growth, which I really like that combination, and I don't run it. I've got, you know, another couple of jungles that I don't even run the Chaos Affinity, but whenever I do run Chaos Affinity, that card is definitely in the deck. I might not use it because I want to try out new things. I'm trying out new things, and that's what this is all about. But I don't think anybody can say, hey, this card is perfectly fine. There's clearly some issues with that combination. You know, if you use that with something like Thorned Yami, those 2 cards together can absolutely destroy people. And it's, you know, that is saying, hey, they built a good deck. But I think it goes along, there's a little more issues behind it. And I would definitely like to see a lot more attention paid to these type of cards, even though, hey, only 1.5% of decks have it, and it's the 19th most popular card. You know, that's an issue, and I think Epic needs to really look at the players instead of just looking at the numbers. You know, is the #1 card Cole of the Week? Because everybody uses that card. You know, like, casters use it, you know, all ADCs. Everybody uses Cole of the Week. So is that the most popular card? And, you know, yeah, probably through the numbers, that is definitely probably one of the most popular cards. But if you ask me, hey, what's your favorite card? I'm not going to say Cole of the Week. It's the most popular because I use it because, you know, it costs 1 point, and it's a great card. So I really think the data and the actual playing style and player base are not lining up. All right, well, let's kind of move on from that. you know, there are some more balancing that's coming up, but the only thing they talked about is unstable cyborg, so we'll have to kind of wait and see. They did say there's a significant, you know, patch coming out, the 43.3, so we can look forward to that. Now, the first question they bring up is, you know, it's really one of those fluffer questions that someone wanted to know why skins seem random and they're not coming out with good skins. And basically the short answer is, hey, it takes a lot of work. And, you know, they've answered that 9 million times. I think they answer it every community corner, or at least every other community corner. I'd definitely like some more relevant questions instead of just them answering the same old stuff. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. The next question they ask, or the next question they answer is, someone asked, can you tell us why Quang got a buff? He didn't need one, and y'all gave him one. Why are you giving him buffs? And the answer is, hey, he didn't really receive a buff. We just wanted to make his ability easier to use. Right now, his ability, you know, landing that tether was very tough for him with the movement speed. And they talked about, for everybody that played in Legacy, Legacy was much, much slower. You ran incredibly slow, but they had that run feature where, you know, it would triple your run speed. And since they've changed that out, they've just naturally increased movement speed. So it went from 300 movement speed to 700 movement speed. But Quang's tether size did not change. And it used to not be a problem because, you know, people walked around, basically. Now everybody's running at, you know, crazy speeds, and with all the gyms and things like that to increase movement speed, they just wanted to make it where this ability is, you know, it's much easier to use and it's a lot more stable of an ability. And I completely agree with that. I don't really feel that he got a buff. It's just he's a little bit easier to land his tether. Now, during this question, they brought up a bigger reticle. So they didn't really go into detail about it, but they said expect more changes like this, and they did say bigger reticles. So I don't know if that means that our bullets are going to be bigger around, or if, you know, we're going to have kind of a aim assist, but they did mention it, and I thought it was worth saying, you know, in this video. Now, the last question that they answer, and it's really not a question, it's a couple of comments. One person commented, hey, it's impossible to out-tank the amount of damage heroes do, and another person commented, hey, all you need is a couple of tanks and a support to win matches. And, you know, they brought this up because, hey, these are two people saying two completely opposite things about the exact same thing. And, you know, I think that's worth mentioning as well. Everybody has a different perception of what is good, what is bad, everything like that. And I think it's definitely worth talking about. And, you know, in my opinion, if you're with a team or if you have just any sort of communication, you can do very well with a couple of tanks, or you can do very well with a couple of ADCs. Paragon is all about team play, and if you are playing as a solo hero going into a 2v or a 3v1 situation, it doesn't matter how tanky you are, you're going to die. And they really talk about how they balance the game is based off of 1v1 fights. So they balance tanks off of fighting, you know, a single ADC, and they say, hey, how much damage is he going to be able to withstand, or a caster or something like that. And then, you know, they do the same thing with other heroes, like two casters going head to head. They want to make it where, hey, you know, they'll probably kill each other. It boils down to skill at that point. And, you know, I completely agree with that. If you are in a 2v2 situation, you know, hey, it's a balanced fight. But if you're in a 2v1 situation, you should get out of that situation. But, you know, that's kind of just a learning curve of Paragon. That's what Paragon's always been about. And people putting themselves in bad situations, you know, yeah, it gets frustrating. But learning that, hey, this is a bad situation is really a big key to Paragon. Now, they also did say that in Paragon, it's biased towards offense. If you take two completely identical heroes, everything is the exact same, farm, level, and the hero, you know, let's just say two steals. And they go head to head and do the exact same thing. But one hero has power card on, and one hero has a defense card on. The power hero is going to win. And this is strictly because power wins fights, defense makes fights last longer. So Epic's idea is, hey, we want matches to be fast. We want them to speed up. So we need to be more biased towards the abilities that speed fights up. We don't want, you know, if you remember back in the Legacy days, you could go full tank steal and there'd be a 5-minute team fight in mid lane because no one could kill each other. We're just sitting there, you know, punching each other like crazy. Or remember Rampage, he could just tank everything. Once he popped his ult, you know, it was just run away from him and let him get out of his ult because there's nothing you're going to be able to do to him. Your whole team could focus on him, and, you know, it just delays the fight. Or delays the match, and that's how come they've kind of started to be more biased towards damage and power. So that's really kind of, you know, that's an explanation of it, and I think it's great. I think that's a very good explanation, and I completely agree with it. You know, it might be tough to learn and deal with, but I completely agree with that philosophy, and I think it is a solid one. Well, that's going to wrap it up, guys, and I'd really like to talk to y'all. What do y'all think about Unstable Cyborg? In my personal opinion, I think it is a little overpowered, of course, but I also think that this card should have been looked at because, you know, I think there are a lot more than 1.5% of decks that use this card, and there's only 19% or 7.5% of matches that people are even using this card. I think that any match that lasts for more than 20 minutes, someone's got this card on if they do have those type of heroes that can take advantage of it. But, you know, I'd really like to hear from y'all. What do y'all think? Well, thanks for watching, guys, and if you did enjoy, show me some love. Leave me a comment. Think about subscribing. Join our Discord because we do have that private match coming up if you're interested in that. And as always, I'll see y'all in the next video.